So, welcome to the Grow Patiently podcast. My name is Hugo Trace from growpatiently.com. And this is the podcast where we speak with healthcare success leaders and we hear all about their stories. We learn from them. We learn about their businesses, all the ups and downs. Now, before we get started and I introduce my guests, I do want to let you know about the small fee for the podcast, which is that we like to do things a little bit differently, which is that if you're watching and you enjoy it, or you laugh, or you smile, or you cry, maybe, hopefully not, then please do just share this podcast with one other person. That's it. That's the only fee. So welcome, Justin and Nicole. Do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you, Hugo.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm Justin. This is my wife, Nicole.
Oh.
And we're both the founders of Coastal MD Integrative Health and Wellness here in Long Island, New York.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm excited because it's the first time that I've had two guests on the podcast at the same time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Great.
Yeah, so excited to see how it's going to go. So before we dive in, I want to tell you that since starting this podcast, I've had this idea that I'd love to one day go around all the places of all the guests where they live and go to the different recommendations that they've given me. I'm going to have this podcast road trip I'm planning. So I'm wondering, on your leg of the trip, what do I need to do in Long Island, New York, to really experience the area as the locals do? What have I got to eat or drink or go to or something like that?
First?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you have to have some New York pizza.
Yeah, definitely.
But then I think the other very special thing, especially where we are out on Long Island, is all of wine country, and even around the holidays, it's very beautiful out east, and cutting down Christmas trees for the holidays and all the fun activities.
Yeah, so I think it's good because Nicole's giving you a good winter activity.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah,
I'm going to give you a good summer activity.
There
There's a place called Fire Island that has beautiful beaches here on the South Shore of Long Island. And it's not like anywhere else in the world that we've been because, there's these cute little homes.
No cars.
And there's no cars, so you get there by boat. And there's restaurants, bars, you ride bicycles around, and it's just a great place to, bring your kids and have a great time and enjoy the summer here on Long Island. So I would definitely recommend if you come in the summer, you have to add that to the list.
Now you have to do both. Summer
exactly. I'll really have to make it a long trip so I can summer to winter, Christmas tree chopping, and then back to Fire Island.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's
okay, great. Yeah, well, it sounds it. I mean, the idea of no cars, that's very exciting. We do have one island that's in the channel between England and France called Sark, which is really small. I think there's only about 500 people who live there, and they're not allowed cars on there either. It's quite interesting.
Really? And they get around a bicycle as well then, I'm assuming? Or
yeah, and boats, I suppose.
Yes,
yeah.
And boat, yeah. I love that. Okay. That ties into a lot of, our practice too, so.
The perfect segue to get into the practice. So let's do it. Tell us about Coastal MD. Tell us a bit about, maybe let's pull it all the way back. Let's start by giving a rough indication to the people who are listening about what your actual practice does and who they serve and stuff like that. And then we'll talk about how you developed it and things like that.
Yeah, of course. You want me to do it? Or
you want to start with a little bit of what we do and I'll tell us how we got there?
Yeah, sure. So at Coastal MD, we really wanted to work on a more progressive form of medicine, right? And what we mean by that is we wanted to pull together different modalities and different specialties all within one roof because patients need that personalized approach with a lot of different things. So we started with non-narcotic pain management, so in the form of medical massage, trigger point injections, which involve a plant-based anti-inflammatory, hormone replacement therapy for both men and women, weight loss is also a very key player in all that, and IV vitamin hydration, right? So we initially started with all of that, all stemming from comprehensive blood work that is a little bit more than most of our patients would get at their annual physical with their general practitioner. And what that allowed us to do was to customize a plan to give them the best vitality that they could achieve in their life, right? Because all of those different modalities that I just discussed, they tie into one another. And the conventional model, at least here in the States, is, you go to each doctor for each one of those modalities that I just spoke about, whether it's endocrine, your general practitioner, bariatric team. Those are all very siloed, where we want to bring them all together, right? And since then, we've expanded into peptide therapy, which I've been doing for the past close to 8 years now, just on a smaller basis, but it's really taken off, and with the popularity too. And then we also offer a wide array of aesthetics as well, things skincare, injectables, and whatnot, because it's one thing to feel great, right? But you also want to look great too. It's almost like a tune-up shop for people, right? Because anything that you either want to achieve, and soup up or repair, we can help you do all in one spot. So that's really expanded out, and now there's complementary services of a general practitioner to service our clients, and then women's health as well too, which is exploding here in America finally, because there really is a big demand for it, especially in the peri and postmenopausal population. So in a nutshell, very quickly, that's what we do, and that's how we tie that all together. So,
oh, it sounds fantastic. Funnily enough, I was just saying the other day that there needs to be more of that, though. You can go to one place and have the ultimate checkup, and they say, look, these things are great, these things need work. So let's go and speak to these people who already work with us. So that's fantastic. Look good, feel good as well.
Exactly. So it sounds like, part of your road trip is going to just have to be coming in to get a checkup.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I really will have to, then I can do the plan. I can come back to when I do the Fire Island, and I can get the second check, and you'll say, brilliant, your cholesterol's dropped and this and
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Exactly. You're feeling like a new man.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, well, it sounds excellent. So, Nicole, why don't you tell us then, how did you, the two of you, sort of come to the industry and then eventually the business and where you are now?
Well, I think our entire lives, we always loved helping people, no matter what capacity that was in. And then we are both physician assistants by trade. We went to PA school, and we first started in critical care. So we started in the surgical ICU and then branched off into surgery. Many different surgical procedures we've been part of, and really got to see a lot of hospital medicine. I also, for a brief period of time, was in office-based medicine, dermatology too. And we really, we got to see how much we wanted to help people in a different way and really personalize their care so that we could increase health span. Because the difference between lifespan, health span, so lifespan is from the day you're born until the day you pass away. Health span is really how many years you live in good health and are happy. So being in corporate medicine, we asked ourselves one day, how do we reach more, do more, help more? And how can we really help people achieve their best life every single day? So that's really started our thought process for Coastal MD, and it really is to achieve health span.
Yeah.
And help people live their best.
Yeah.
Every day.
And I think especially going through COVID too, I was working in the hospital at the time. I think it really kickstarted, the momentum for this.
Yeah, people started finally thinking about their health and how they can improve.
Yep.
But I think the question was always how, or even when you're going in for a surgical procedure, well, how did I get here and how can I make my life better? And there's tons of information out there, but it's really hard there's so many different things and avenues to focus on. So it's been so humbling to help patients really achieve their goals and show them that how to.
Mm. Yeah, it's lovely to see. I mean, obviously, we can hear the passion in both your voices as to why you're doing this, but it's to see the expression on your faces about the impact that you're having is great as well. So I suppose maybe perhaps rather diplomatically, you said that you saw some stuff in where you were working before, and I imagine you felt, I don't really like the way that that's done. We're going to go and do something different. And that must be therefore the thing that you've sort of pinned your whole business on when you started. You said this is the key thing that we're going to have as our driving force, improving people's health span, for example. So taking that, how did you then get it started, get those first patients, and then get to where you are now?
Yeah, that's honestly a
That's a
great
great
question.
question.
I had been working in the space somewhat beforehand, on a very limited basis. So I had a general idea of, what I needed to put together in order to make it a great success, right? Which, I think it's safe to say it has been, which we're very proud of. And a lot of it was back to what you were just mentioning and what we saw in corporate medicine, which was the personal relationship had been completely taken out of medicine for us, right? Like it seemed like healthcare or the care that we were giving as providers was almost transactional, in showing up, doing a certain job, moving on to the next one, right? And that's not how medicine was even 50 years ago, right? I'm not saying 100 years ago, but 40, 50 years ago, people knew their general practitioner very well. They had relationships, they had rapport, right, with the people that were giving them care. And, we were like, we need to lead with that, right? And Nicole and I, we have a great network and support system too. And to be honest with you, still to this day, most of our growth and, patients that follow us have all really been from word of mouth and, just spreading positive experiences that they've had. We've since branched out since then with, different marketing and things along those lines. But the organic growth that started very early on is still very much alive today, I think.
Yeah.
Which
part of the community.
Yes, yeah. A ton of community outreach. We really like to, that's another thing, right? Like we really do want to embed ourselves within Long Island and the other communities that we serve because that does make a difference. So we constantly are doing charity events. We're doing toy drives. We're doing food drives, other community events. Just spread education on what we do, right, and see where we can help people, right, and work with those less fortunate. So I also think that that's a big differentiator for us as well to really kickstart some of this success, or some less than common ways for a medical practice to make themselves known,
Yeah.
So
I like to think of it as being a pillar of the community. And I always look in movies and I see that everyone knows the GP's name, the main doctor's name. And he or she is just a part of, everyone in the family knows that person and they come around and they're like, how are you getting on with your schooling? And like, how are you getting on with that cough that you had and all these different things. Whereas now it's much more that I mean, in the UK, certainly, you'll be having phone call conversations with doctors you've never met. And then the next time you'll have it with another doctor. And it's not
yeah,
easy, really. So you're really solving something that needed solving,
yeah.
essentially. And that makes a huge difference. And I think what the work you're doing in the community plays a huge part. I mean, would you say that that was one of the key factors in the initial success of the fact that your willingness to actually just get out there and help people and then see the returns from that point?
Yeah, I think a lot of the feedback that we received was, you guys are everywhere. Like I've never seen, anything on social media or anything like that where, medical practice is, going out and partaking in these community events like this before, So at least here in the States, you'll see some of the big health corporations go to some of the larger events, but on like, a much smaller community level and smaller organizations, it's not really a lot of medical practices that are going out to do that. And, it's something that we're fortunate enough to be able to do, with our time, and resources. So I would say that that was a key component, but the bigger component, I think, is the larger picture to that, which is the connections that we make, right? And just our ability to lead with compassion and to develop that rapport and relationship. Because Hugo, our patients, they become family almost, right? Mm-hmm. They're coming in at the least once a month. So we know what's going on with their family when they're going on vacation, when we're going on vacation, so
we'll start with the husband and then we have the wives. I have a lot of yes. couple, and I tease because I say that, I hope that you have better dates than this, but I love having you here today. So then it turns into just a whole family atmosphere, which we love. I mean, that's the root of just Justin and my life as well, is family first always. So we treat everyone as family. And I think it really goes a long way.
Yeah, very well said.
That's fantastic. Nicole, what would you say to perhaps someone who's listening and has a healthcare practice and they're thinking, oh, that sounds quite interesting. I remember 10 years ago when I used to do a bit of community outreach, I went and did a talk in a school. Why did we stop doing that? You know, that kind of thought. What would you say to them that would maybe be a simple way for them to get back out there and start doing a few small things? Where should they start again?
That's a good question. I think what happens with everyone, not even healthcare, it's just life, right? Everything's busy. You have a family, your family's growing, or, even weekends, there's a ton of different events going on. And with us too. So even we started almost 5 years ago. And during that time, we were blessed with two boys and now under the age of 3. And it does become hard because, weekends are sort of tied up. But if you can even start small with community events, and there are so many different events that we even brought our kids to.
Yeah.
And patients love to see it. Get your family involved. If you have kids who are willing to help you, then, make it a family event, just even for a few hours.
Young enough kids, perhaps, when you start getting the 16-year-olds and you say, yeah, it's going to be great, come down.
Hopefully they can help out a little bit more.
Yeah. You'll probably get the big eye rolls, right, Hugo?
Yeah, exactly. But it's great to hear. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I just like a piece of advice for, what you were mentioning too, is you start small with the closer circle, right? So like if you're talking specifically about a healthcare provider, small practice owner, you probably have that patient that is familiar to you, that is either involved in an organization, involved in a union, involved in a school district, involved in a church or other location, that you just, tap on their shoulder and be like, hey, is there something coming up, that maybe I could be a part of, who's going to be at the event. And that's kind of how it snowballs, right? Because then the hardest part is starting. And then once you start doing it, then, all right, this should be my process for it. This is how I can fill my schedule with the best time. Mm-hmm. So it's just getting back started, but use the circle that's closest to you and then branch out from there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Definitely. And also they'll bring you in because obviously they're friendly with you and enjoying the work that you're doing together.
Yeah.
I'm interested. It's slightly off-piste from talking about how you're growing the business and stuff like that, but just from a sort of consumer point of view or from a patient point of view, what does someone do like as a starting point when they're coming to a business like yours or practice like yours, sorry? What's like the biggest lever that they typically pull to improve their health? And I suppose selfishly, I'm just thinking for myself, what do I need to do next? Like, why don't I just be honest? What's my next step to elevate my health span? Because it's so interesting that we're having this conversation. Maybe it's because I knew we were about to have it, but just yesterday I was talking about not only the thing I mentioned about how I really want a one-stop place where I can go, because in the UK as well, there's not really a place. It's not that easy to go and get checkups like you do in the States.
Yes.
And also I just want a checkup. I want them to say exactly a bit like a car servicing. Just want to know what's good, what's not good, and I'll work on it for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's like typically the biggest lever that someone like myself should pull to, or am I just being far too broad?
Yeah, I think, blood work shows you a lot, but going back to the basics, hydration, what does your diet look like? What does your nutrition look like? What does your movement look like? Your exercise look like? Going back, and your sleep, going back to those basics fixes a lot.
Yeah, and we will start a lot of it, obviously, like Nicole's saying, with getting that great history.
Yeah.
Right. So like, we really want to know, what does your day-to-day look like? Mm-hmm. Right. Are you working? Do you have a family? Are you stressed?
Everyone's different. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that's why you can't treat people cookie cutter. Right. And then there we layer on some really comprehensive blood work, which, you were just using the example with your GP. I just saw a patient before this podcast, and it's like, all right, here's the range. So like conventionally, you're considered normal, but you have this much room to be actually optimized, right? So it's adding additional labs that say aren't routine, that paint more of a metabolic picture, a nutrient picture for a nutrition picture for the patient, and then showing them, all right, yes, this may be normal, but in our world, when we're trying to optimize and get you to achieve the best version of yourself, this is really the range that you want to be in, right? So just understanding where you are in time, like getting that metabolic picture inside your body with some comprehensive blood work, layering that in with your lifestyle currently will help get you a good foundation or a good starting point to be like, all right, now we know where your deficiencies are. This is the plan that we're going to implement to make sure that we improve those numbers and achieve everything overall. Right.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly.
I've got work to be getting on with then, it sounds like.
if I wish I could send lab orders to the UK because I happily would.
Oh, bless you. So how do you two look after your own health when you're running a business? Because I know from my own business that it's difficult, it's stressful, it's great, don't get me wrong, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but sometimes you do end up turning to the pizza and not even the best New York pizza, the quick pizza, and other such similar sort of shortcuts that typically are detrimental to the long game that you're trying to play. So, is it do you have like day-to-day things that you do, or is it a bit of a mind game as well for the two of you? And obviously you're a partnership as well. Just give us a bit of a window into what it's like managing this business towards success while maintaining your own health, considering that's exactly what you're trying to do for your patients.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, it is very hard. I think we hold both of ourselves accountable. Mm-hmm. So there are times where you definitely want to just go home, melt into the couch and eat pizza. And he'll grab me and be like, no, we have to do, even if we're working out for 20 minutes, we got to do it and we'll feel better. And he's right. But I think too, like we do so much in holding our patients accountable on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, that's motivating for me to hold myself accountable to a lot of it as well. Yeah. Also, you want to be able to make recommendations to them too, and any recommendations that I give my patients, I have to be either doing or trying or something.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of that too, like really for us, it comes down to movement. And, I say it all the time. Anybody here will tell you, movement is medicine, right? So, sitting around or just being inactive, it does something to just your mental state too. So it's really good to release those endorphins, whether it's even just going out for a walk, going out in nature, or getting a quick 20-minute workout in, like Nicole mentions. And it looks different for the two of us, right? Like I really do enjoy exercising and working out. Nicole is an equestrian buff. So, she has her two horses and that's her outlet, right? Because you mentioned not just physically, but mentally, what do you do to, relieve some of this stress, right? That happens when owning a small business. And, it can be taxing a lot of times, right? I always say that, owning a business is like a roller coaster. The highs are very high and the lows can be very low, right? So how do you manage those huge fluctuations in your day to day, right? And it really goes back to having a healthy outlet, right? For your time, for your mind, your own headspace that is going to, at the minimum, just put you mentally in a better place, but it's not going to be detrimental to your health overall. Yeah. So physical activity, great way to do it. Being one with nature. Everybody's got their own thing: meditation, grounding, etc. Ours would be horses and exercise, I would say. Yeah. So
probably good exercise on the horse as well. Sorry, go on.
It is. It's hard work. It is hard work. So what about yourself? Do you have anything that you use? I mean,
I do actually. I have a whole morning thing that I do that I'm pretty strict on, which is like my time where I just have my brain totally in. Actually, it's not really about that. It's more about being in my body, I would say. So that's quite important to me. And hanging out with my wife first thing in the morning, I really enjoy as well. And then other than that, it's running, really. I'm not a massive runner. I don't want like 10K and stuff like that, but I really like it. It's like I do it with no headphones and I just try and look at the nature stuff out and about. Even in London, in the city. I go into the parks and like the geese are in there and all this kind of stuff. And that really fills me with, I suppose it fills my cup and allows me to continue on with the copious calls and whatever else that pops in throughout the day.
Great point. Yes. Yeah. Can't pour from an empty cup, right, yes. Hugo? So
exactly. Yeah. The next thing I think I want to talk about is, I suppose it's sales, really. I always say it's sales. And in healthcare, people think, oh my goodness, sales, we don't do sales and all this kind of stuff. I think in your particular industry within healthcare, as it's I don't know, from my knowledge, it's a relatively new concept, historically, I would say. And as with all healthcare, there's loads of jargon and it's quite confusing for the end user to even understand what's happening. And confusion loses sales, shall we say, in the business sense. But it's got extra pressure, I think, in healthcare, because I always say that you've got to learn sales in healthcare. That's your duty. Because if you truly, Justin and Nicole, want to help people, then you better figure out a way to be able to convince them to make a decision that's in their interest, which is to take up this treatment, unless you're going to be unethical, but that's to one side.
Yeah.
And so therefore you must learn how to break down complex decision-making processes that are in their brain and complex jargon and terminology so that it's clear for them, so that they can actually think, you know what, you are right. This is something I need to think about, and maybe I should prioritize it. So I thought let's pull into that a little bit, because I think yours is, I don't know, it's harder than like I've got a strain in my neck. Everyone's kind of used to that. So how do you deal with that? Because it must be quite complex. Your blood works, tons of different things. Just do you have, let's start with this. Do you have your own process that you follow, both for you two and your team, where you're like, this is our sales flow, this is our patient flow, and this is why we do what we do?
It's honestly such a great question, Hugo, and I'll tell you why. I believe 100% of what you just said, right? So like when we first started, we were just figuring it out, like completely. There's so many other things to worry about in healthcare, right? And you don't think that, sales and promotion is going to be such a major part of your practice, right? And there comes a time where it's like, all right, we have the foundation done. We need to be having this conversation, right? And it's really more so a guiding. And you are right; it is a bit taboo, of like a phrase, if you will, within healthcare, generally speaking. But now, branching out to your point, being a more progressive and newer area of medicine, it's something that needs to be involved, because our biggest part of sales is education. Right? What is it that we do? Why do we do it? And what is integrated medicine here? You know what I mean? So where I'm getting at with this is that's where we started, right? And only as of recently have we hired, a dedicated sales team, implemented a CRM, things like that. And that's, only as of the past couple of months, it's relatively very new. So that's the next iteration of things, right? Because I think your point is spot on. And up until this point, it really has been leading with education, right? So, you could tie that into the sales flow, if you will, because an educated consumer is going to be, more trusting of what we're having to offer, and just have a better understanding of what is the value that they're going to receive from us, right? Because to your point further, we're more of a service industry, right? So it's not like I could pitch a product and, here's the product, this is what it's going to do for you, right? Our service is going to be a little bit different for each person, right? So how do you tailor that so that there's a good understanding for them? So does that give you a good sense, about, where we're at? I mean, we could spend some more time on this, but that's my initial take on it.
No, it certainly does. And I'm already getting more interested to dive deeper. So let's just do it, essentially. Yeah. I think I find it really interesting because from my point of view, I speak with practice owners who are trying to grow their business, right? And they want help with marketing, a website, online stuff. And sometimes they're not a good fit. And that's fine. I usually just kind of tell them, obviously, because I don't want to sort of work when it's not a good fit.
Absolutely.
But when I think it is a good fit, and I feel like, oh my gosh, we can definitely help you. Like we've done all of this stuff with these people. This feels like really similar. And I reckon we'll do this stuff and it's really going to change the stuff that you said you're struggling with. And when I do something that then means maybe they don't go forward, I actually feel kind of bad by myself. I'm like, oh, I really feel like that was a mistake. I must have done something that's made them feel like they don't want to do this thing. They want to put it off for 6 months, but I know what will happen. In 6 months, they will either come back, which is fine, or they'll go to someone else, but they've wasted 6 months and they could have done this and that. And I just know that it was something I did. Well,
Yeah.
usually, I think. Um, so I did have a question I wanted to ask. Oh, yes, that's what I was going to say. So, because you mentioned at the beginning that one of the key parts of you getting more patients is through word of mouth and through community building, one of the things you're doing there, perhaps intentionally, either way, it's a bonus, is that you are educating people, like you just said.
Yeah.
And that means that the sale, some of it is done beforehand because they're sold on the two of you, they're
Yeah.
sold on Coastal MD. And that's really powerful because it means that certainly at the earlier stages, you can grow sideways by leaning on relationships. So all you really need to make sure they understand is the technical element. Um, and I was interested to know whether that's something you were sort of aware of or acutely aware of. Is that something that you've thought about?
So it's funny, we're not going to take credit right now for when we first started, right? However, looking back, we're like, that's what we were actually doing, and that's why it was working, right? Because in small business, like I'm sure you do, you constantly reevaluate yourself and where things are at, and we found what's working, what's not working, and then upon reflection, so like if I'm telling this to someone else or someone who's just getting started, yeah, be the best advocate for your business. And in turn, that is sales. I think sometimes people hear sales and think, oh, I got to hire a separate salesperson. I need to do this. I need to do that. It's as simple as understanding what your services or your product's the best, right? And then being able to educate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Just talking about it and being yourself with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's something that now we want to mesh into everything that we do moving forward, and it is a big part of our practice as a whole, meaning education, right? Because you lead with that, improves your credibility, right? Because especially other healthcare practitioners, listening to this podcast, a big part of what you do is going to be the patients who are kind of, as we say here, kicking tires, right? Oh, do I want to go check this out? Do I not? If you could show credibility in your website, in doing podcasts or speaking engagement, social media, right, that's going to build rapport with the people that are checking you out, and that's indirectly your sales, or directly, however you want to spin it, because they're looking to somebody to trust, right? Healthcare is also a very personal field, right? So if they trust you, you're going to then make it easier to quote unquote have a sale or bring them into your network, right? So,
Mm. Yeah, and then the next stage of the challenge you've already alluded to, which is that as you sort of scale to a certain level, you then have to start bringing in colder audiences. And that's when you need to start thinking about, okay, in the
yeah,
CRM, for example, it's useful to know who's at what stage. So then we can sort of implement these things to bring them a bit further down the line. And it's a fun game, though. How are you enjoying moving towards that?
Hugo, it's a game changer, right? So, I mean, for what we've been trying to do and exactly what you're talking about, it really is a game changer because you don't, it being, let's just use healthcare, right? Because that's what we're talking about. You don't really realize how many interested patients sometimes you may lose, this or that. The CRM is giving us great insight and great, analytics on, like this is how interested certain demographics are. This is what's happening on that patient journey, that we're trying to clearly map out. And it also helps you guide energy into areas that are having great returns, right? So I feel like it's doing, the same work, but much smarter, right? And much more intentional than how we were doing it before. And there's so many amazing features now in these CRMs that are just like mind blowing with them, and they automate a lot of it too, so that's why I'm saying it's really, if anything, it saves a little bit of time and energy. But like you said, when you're expanding that reach, you need some support, you need some help, and you need organization, right? Because if you're kind of, if you're trying to do the same exact thing that you did on day one, a couple of years later, it's not going to pan out. So we're very excited about it. We're expanding more into it and really leaning into it. So yeah, we're excited to see how much of it we could actually leverage, for the practice. So
Yeah, I think having the overview of the numbers of what people are at what stages makes a huge difference. And
yeah,
a bit like what you just said, I always kind of say to my team that the people, us, as in the way that we are, and that got us to where we are now, are not going to be the same people that will get us to the next stage. We need to figure out who are we now going to be. Once we figured that out, we'll just get there anyway because we'll be those people who achieve that.
mhm.
Um, but one of the things I was just chatting to a client earlier today, and I was saying to him, it's December. So not that many people are thinking about starting something brand new.
Mhm.
Not to say they're not, but a lot of people are reconsidering things that they have once considered. And that's where things like CRMs come and play a big part because you can look through all the list of those people who came, they seemed keen, and then they just kind of started ghosting, they disappeared, life took over, and all that kind of stuff. And then
Yes.
you can look at the figures and you can be like, okay, we've actually got 100K sitting there of people who've kind of got these plans out. We might not have even seen those, and we're off busy trying to find new people, but actually, all of them are right at the end. And all they need is a conversation to see, like, how are you getting on? We do care about you, even though you didn't come and take the treatments. What's the latest with this and that? So I was going to ask, um, because you mentioned relationship, Nicole, is a huge part of what you both do. What do you do when you're sort of bringing people back in to the business? I can just imagine that you have a few things up your sleeve that are sort of friendly and family and interesting ways to make people feel like, oh, that's lovely. Those two really care about us, and I should come back in.
I think just kind of being compassionate about, why they're coming back in, what their goals are, and that might have changed from their initial. So, and kind of looking at that change and just optimization and just moving forward from there.
Yeah, well, she's being a little modest as well too, Hugo. So because of those relationships and those connections, Nicole will personally call some of those people on that list, and
Yeah.
reach back out to them personally, right? And obviously, it's not all of them. However, it's those ones that there was a connection and there was that rapport,
Yeah.
and she'll personally reach out to them and connect with them via telephone, right? And not an email, not a text, usually a telephone call.
Yeah.
Because I'll hear her sometimes. I'm like, "Hun, it's Saturday at 4 o'clock. Like, who are you on the phone with right now?" And it's like, "Oh, it's that patient." I'm like, "Oh man, you got to give it a break." So it's making that personal connection, you know. And now with the CO, because that was all based off of Nicole just kind of knowing and tracking certain things in our system, but nothing formal, right?
Yes.
The CRM now is going to be able to serve that list up and be like, oh yeah, this is what it's, these are the people that we really should be, pouring into for that refresher, Hugo. So I think that's a very, very big point to make, because you're right. People, they get busy, they may fall off a little bit. That was a big problem we were having, right? And I'm sure other people can relate to this. Is our front desk didn't have I would say, an extensive protocol with contacts of patients, right? So they would call them twice, and if there was no callback or return, it would kind of fall off like that. And we've seen just how little in comparison that is compared to what we should be doing. And the CRM has now given us those capabilities to be able to send, an email reminder 30 days from their first contact and follow up 6 months later, see if they're still interested, So that is a huge, huge part of things too. But that's something that we're just getting into, right? Yeah. Personal touch, her phone calls. So.
Well, I think it's great. And you said, Nicole, something interesting that you revisit the goals. And I actually think that's a key part because everyone is aiming to something. And even if they're now, an actual patient and they're through treatments, if you continue to refresh them during the tougher times, because sometimes people want to quit, I presume, and they think, oh, and then you just got to remind them, when you first came and you said this was what you're struggling with and you really wanted to get that. And I'm sure you're just naturally doing that, Nicole, or both of you. That's what it seems. But yeah, the CRM is great because it will let you know when is a good time to just touch base as well, and it reminds you, takes that mental load off. It's
Yes.
interesting. There's this study that's regularly cited, but funny enough, it's like one of those, what is it, a Mandela effect, where it's not a real thing. But they say that between 7 and 12 times, I don't know, they say Harvard or Yale or Cambridge did a study that typically people inquire with a business, and it takes between 7 and 12 times for you to actually get them on in contact. Because you know what it's like, you subscribe to something, and if you only call me twice, the chances are that you're not going to get through to me. But it doesn't mean I'm not interested. But you know, I
Yes.
just literally can't get the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a funny study because yeah, it's not really real. But I feel like it is real. It's just that the study didn't happen. But I was thinking one of the things I sometimes say to people on the front desks is, because sometimes I do a bit of training on the mindset required for following up with patients, and I say, you know, you've got to kind of imagine that you're not chasing people. You don't even think that you're like following up feels a bit uncomfortable. They're really busy. You're doing them a favor. Like, sometimes you have a problem and you're thinking, oh, I've got to get that electrician in for that thing that's like, been bugging me. And my wife's been telling me, come on, Hugo, you said sort it, that kind of vibe. And then I'll just go online, I'll find an electrician, I send it off to two of them, and I'm like, hey, I need help. And then to me, a small part of my mind is like, job done. I've done it now, even though you haven't. And so at that point, they've got to follow up with you. Otherwise, you might just lose it. So I was going to bring it back to you two, which is that, do you have any things now that you're developing out the team that you specifically train with them to understand the stuff that you've just naturally built up through building the business over the last years?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is approaching it with curiosity, right? So, to your point, when you're on our end of the call and somebody either's not answering or they're short or anything like that, it's, oh, I'm a nuisance. I'm bothering them. I'm interrupting them, right? However, to your point further, they're busy, right? Or they may have something going on at home. So a family member may be sick, or you're catching them as they're in between appointments and they're trying not to rush you, but they have to get ready for a meeting, whatever it is. You have to make sure that you're approaching it with some curiosity, because you never know when that opportunity is going to be ideal, right? You have to keep trying. Timing is everything in life. So if you keep that open mind and, be inquisitive with the patient, it shows indirectly compassion, right? And then that's when that connection is formed then too. So I feel like that's a great place to start when training, certain individuals, because then it also helps you develop, I would say, thicker skin, right? Especially if you're getting denied or someone is disgruntled or what have you, right? It's not necessarily you, right? It could be something else external that's happening to them as well. So great question, Hugo.
Yeah.
You too. You compliment me too much on my questions. I'll start getting big-headed. I think of them on the spot. It's the things you're saying get me interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, that idea of getting a thicker skin is something that I really find interesting as well. I tell people sometimes you should just go and ask for things on the street or, in your life that should not be asked for. There's like a definite no, and then get the no and realize that your life is fine. It's not a big deal. So you just go to the front of the queue when everyone's annoyed and you just say, hey, do you mind if I just go in the front? And they're like, yes, you can't do that. And you go, okay. And then you go to the back. Little things like that. Or you're in the shop and you just say, can I have this for free? They're like, no. You're like, okay, cool. So although every once in a while you do get it as well, you say, would you be happy to just knock off 30%? Like you work here, would you do a staff discount? And they're like,
Yeah.
but I don't even know you. And anyway, it just gets you used to this idea that, of course, like no is not something that's terrible. It's not something that's going to ruin your life.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Nicole, you were about to say something, but I was so in my own ramble after you said that my questioning was so good that I missed it.
It's perfect. And you don't take things personally, right? I think that's the main thing. Don't take
Exactly.
it personally.
Yeah, exactly. Because they could just be having it's almost always that they're just having a difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's confusion, or there's a million scenarios, right? So it's not our job to
Assume.
yes, and make a story up in our head, right? And you need to approach it so that it's an open slate, right? And then you help guide them back to where you want them to be. So that's the gist about that. So,
what's the most difficult thing or the biggest challenge that the two of you have faced running your business and growing your business? Maybe you've got the same one, or maybe you've got different ones. And how did you overcome it or them?
There's a lot. The biggest one, what do you want to go first?
I think one of our biggest ones is, and I don't know how it is, in different parts of the world, but just in the insurance world, and just you wanting to really have the best for your patient and treat the patient how they deserve to be treated, has been the hardest part for us. And then insurance not paying for it, not wanting to cover it. And that's where a lot of our memberships and our sales even came into it. Which then it was very hard in the beginning because it's a different mindset for medicine. To, instead of going through insurance, like insurance will pay for it. Look, your insurance is not going to pay for it, but I really feel that this is what you need and this is why you need it. And this is how it's going to be valuable to you. And just having that confidence to step behind that has been one of the hardest things, I think, over the past, even over the last 4 years, the landscape has changed dramatically. So I think every single year it just has become harder and harder to practice medicine the way that you want to practice it. And us just trying to go with the tides of it.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I really do think that's great because I think a lot of problems in business, whether it's healthcare, marketing, sales, anything, a lot of the problems are similar, right? They usually are boiled down to finances, personnel, leads, etc. And, that one is a bit unique to healthcare, right? Because you're almost kind of at the mercy of, a revenue stream, right? That you have to play by their rules, right? And just a little context to what Nicole's referencing. When we first started, we were like pretty much 100% insurance based, right? We selected certain insurances, and about 2.5 years ago, they completely flipped the script on what Nicole just mentioned, right? They didn't want to cover certain things. They were changing their rules, or reimbursements, etc., and it forced us to really pivot our business to a self-pay model as well, right? And, it forced us to evolve and bring on the app that we use now, and develop this membership model, right? So that was like a very big undertaking because we went into this with a mindset, and then it was almost like the rug was ripped down underneath us, and we were like, all right, we're going to keep our cool, but what do we do?
What do we do, and how do we make it affordable for people to take care of themselves?
Yeah. So out of the difficult times comes the solution.
Yes.
It's what always happens.
Yeah.
A setback is, a stage for a comeback, right? So that's where we were at, I'd say about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And, since then we've been able to build out a whole, cash pay model that has complemented some of the insurance that we still do take. So for, the healthcare people out there, I think it's great because then you don't become reliant on one, revenue source, right? And with diversifying that revenue stream, you got some revenue that's coming in, next day on the cash side. And then you have some more longer term sustainable insurance that will be paid down over the next month or two, right? So the two complement each other really well because each of them have their pros and cons, right? So I would agree. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we've faced in the past 5 years for sure. So.
Yeah, the insurance situation in the US it's quite complex, and it's just always changing. And it seems like it does, they're massive, and then the massive medical players are very close with them, and that makes it more complex for the smaller people. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, you're right, Hugo. No, you're
so
right.
This is my final question. And it's been so much fun, by the way. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you both. Now, I do like to ask this question, but I'm going to try and do it a little bit differently because we've got two people here. So usually I say that if you could go back in time to say 20-year-old Nicole or 20-year-old Justin, and you could just see them for a moment as they're wandering down the street, and you can just give them one piece of advice, one piece of life advice, but it's not allowed to be stuff like go and buy loads of Bitcoin in 2009, stuff like that. And then what would you say before you come straight back? But let's do it a little bit different and imagine that you see each other's 20-year-old, for example, or let's say the year that you first meet each other. I don't know how old you were then. So let's say you just have a moment now, suddenly, and you just spot Justin, you just bumped into Nicole, and she's the age that you just met her, and you say, I've just come from the future, just wanted to say this one thing, and then you're gone. What would you both say to one another?
Cool. I have something. I have something.
Okay.
I would tell her to always gamble on yourself and to really trust in yourself, because I think, and this is going to resonate, I think, a lot with the entrepreneurs and healthcare providers that listen to this podcast. I think there's such a period of, I don't want to use the term self-doubt, but a little bit of self-doubt and being afraid to take that jump, right? And even in we mentioned the worst problematic time for the business, but as you know, there's plenty, right? And over time, what that has constantly taught me is that I will always choose to gamble on her and myself, because we are going to come out on top, and you are capable of figuring it out, right? It's always darkest before dawn, I always like to say. And, at those moments where you feel like, you can't do something, you realize, wait, there is a solution here. You implement it, it becomes successful. Yes, it's hard work, but something that at a moment that you thought the world was, the sky was falling, is now hunky dory, right? And it's all because you were able to do it, right? So I would say always gamble on yourself when you can. So
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of that too is, and you kind of said it also, but there is always a solution. You have to stay open-minded, and when you think that there is no solution at all, you just have to sit and breathe and think outside the box.
mhm.
It'll
Yeah.
always lead you in the right direction.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
I enjoyed that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, we are drawing to an end. So I just want to say a massive thank you to you both. You were asking me what fills my cup and what do I do? And I was thinking, one of the things that recently has been filling my cup is doing this podcast. It's a relatively new thing for me, and it's something that complements the work that we do. We work with healthcare practices. It's fun to chat with healthcare practices, and I get to learn so much stuff. And it's just a lot of fun. So it really fills me with joy, even though it's like 5 p.m. now. Sometimes I do it at 10 p.m. It's crazy.
Wow.
But it's a lot of fun, and this one has been great fun. I feel like I've learned things, I've laughed, and I've enjoyed a lot. So thank you both so much for sharing everything. I do really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us, Hugo. We really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I think you have a great podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
thanks
you.
for
Well,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Well, you're very welcome. So, yeah, to round it off, thank you everyone who's listening. I really appreciate it. If you've made it this far, please definitely pay the fee, my gosh, which is that you have to let one person know about this podcast. And other than that, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it, essentially. And to you two, thank you so, so much. Is there anything that people potentially, if they wanted to reach out to you or if they had a question, I mean, obviously I'll put links underneath the video and things like that, but is there a place where they can find you or Coastal MD? Where should they go?
Yeah, the best way would be to email our info email on the website.
Yeah.
Those emails get directed to Nicole and myself. So if there's any questions at all, whether it's from the business side or from a clinical side, yeah,
happy to help.
Yeah, creative side, happy to help them. So
Great.
yeah, thank you, Hugo.
You're very welcome. Now it's out there. You're going to have a whole lot of people contact your catch-all info at saying, "Hey, we can do your SEO work." And
Yeah.
We're ready for it.
Yes.
yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, and thank you everyone listening. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.